Hello, one and all. Welcome back to Press Play Action. As it's Mitchell Lee, it's Brandon 2, it's Tommy Grant. And last we spoke, well, the three of us have talked plenty, but not with a microphone in front of our faces. So last we spoke, we were talking about the Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. All my words got mixed up there. It's been too long since I've been in front of a mic, guys.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about The Hobbit. Yeah, it's been 2 weeks. I'm a little rusty. The Hobbit Trilogy. And we thought maybe we're going to review the first one and the second one and then the third one on a later podcast and then kind of give our thoughts on the overall trilogy. But we have decided that we're just going to handle the whole trilogy in one review, which is going to go ahead and set the tone because we wouldn't be doing that if we had like beloved thoughts about all of these movies that we had and we wanted to share the way we did with the original trilogy. This trilogy, I think, has aged poorly in that when it first started, people were really excited for it. You know, it was the follow-up to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Peter Jackson was coming back. Yeah, there was some concern about, like, they're making it 3 movies when it's just one book. There's less material to get from compared to Lord of the Rings. And then the movies came out, and people seemed to like them just, you know, not as much as Lord of the Rings when they first came out. But over time, I think the opinion of these movies were bad or these movies were mid has become the more prevailing thought about them. Guys, just in overall broad strokes, I would agree with that. And I was someone that went into this. I saw all 3 of those movies. None of them in theaters, weirdly enough, which is very strange. I think it was because I hadn't seen Lord of the Rings at that point, and so I felt like I was on the outside of an inside joke, if that makes any sense. Not that these movies are a joke, but I just felt like I wouldn't understand things, and I felt very detached from the world of The Hobbit. But when I watched them at home or on streaming shortly after their release, I loved Desolation of Smaug. I thought Battle of the Five Armies was good, and I thought An Unexpected Journey was mid. And my thoughts have decreased on all of them except An Unexpected Journey, which is, but it's more mid than I thought it was.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. I don't know. So I'll give my backstory on the trilogy real quick. So I hadn't seen the last 2. I hadn't seen Desolation of Smaug until this, and I hadn't seen the Battle of the Five Armies, and that was because I saw the first one in theaters, and I just thought it was boring and mid, and I fell asleep during it. I finished it later. I finished it later, and I was like, this is fine, but it's rushed. It just feels rushed. It just looks bad. Yeah. So I just never got around to the rest of the trilogy, and then all I heard the rest of the time was it's a mid trilogy. It's not great. There's some moments that are cool, but yeah, that's kind of my backstory with it.
The best way I can compare the Hobbit trilogy to real life scenarios is the Hobbit trilogy is the store brand food.
To Lord of the Rings. Value. I don't want to shit on Walmart, but great value.
Yeah, I think that's kind of rude to the store brand food because
there's some store brand food that's much worse than
you're saying. Dr.
And
Perky
this was much more expensive.
Dr. Perky is what was called on.
The Lord of the Rings movies.
It's just it's the same world, it's the same material, but it just doesn't have the same feel or
same director, similar characters. Same actors, and yeah.
This is what happens to most media companies after they have a big success. They think
Disney. Oh fuck! Sorry, I had something in my throat. Marvel.
Okay. All right.
Fuck.
Well, one of the problems is a lot of people had that high expectation of Lord of the Rings was a cinematic masterpiece. They're all expecting hey, Peter Jackson's coming back. A lot of the returning cast, Ian McKellen, Andy Serkis, all of them, they're coming back. So hey,
dude,
what could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong?
I remember in 2012 was about the time, maybe a little bit before, was when I started getting into tracking the box office. And I remember every single article I read in 2012 had The Hobbit being like, this is the movie we think is going to be the highest grossing movie of 2012. And I'm like, do you not know that The Dark Knight Rises comes out this year? Like, I guess maybe I was just, and funny me, neither of those two was the highest grossing movie of 2012 because the Avengers just blew both of them out of the water. But this was a movie that, absolutely, I didn't mean to necessarily cut you off there, Tommy, but expectations were high.
Yeah.
Because they got Peter Jackson to come back. And it's like, all right, hey,
And
you saw what happened last time.
what I want to add on to that is I was doing some research because I was kind of curious going into this since we were going to review it. I wanted to know why it failed so badly because, like, that's not like Peter Jackson to just completely flop on, especially a passion project of his. What I found out was he had originally wanted to do The Hobbit first before The Lord of the Rings, and this is back in '95. Like, he wanted to do The Hobbit first. And he wanted to do a trilogy where The Hobbit was the first movie and Lord of the Rings was movie 2 and 3. That was his original idea. What happened was MGM and New Line or United something. There's another media company that basically
United Artists.
Yes. One of them had the rights to The Hobbit, the other had the rights to Lord of the Rings, so they couldn't combine
classic rights battle. Yeah.
Yeah, so it ended up being MGM and New Line teamed up and said to Peter Jackson, like, hey, go ahead, do Lord of the Rings, and we can do The Hobbit when United Artists doesn't get to renew their contract or whatever for The Hobbit, and you could do it then. So he obviously, thankfully that happened, and Lord of the Rings happened, and it was a masterpiece. But 2006 came along, and they're like, all right, let's start doing production for The Hobbit. And they actually had Guillermo del Toro as the director in place for that trilogy. He had been doing all the setup. Peter Jackson was on as an executive producer, and pretty much a lot of stuff got delayed. And then Guillermo del Toro, like the year before they were supposed to start filming, basically just said, hey, I can't do this anymore because of all the delays. Bye.
I'm doing something else.
Yeah,
I'm going to go do Pacific Rim instead, which was better than any of these movies.
And so what ended up happening was Peter Jackson was like, well, I guess I'll step in and do this. But instead of delaying more and actually doing the prep time to do this right, he stuck with the timeline that was in place. So he had no time to actually prepare for how he wanted the movie. So he was stuck with pretty much all the stuff Guillermo del Toro set up and had to roll with it, which was a lot of CGI, which is what Guillermo del Toro wanted to do. He wanted to do a lot of CGI, a lot of animated stuff, more high-tech movies, what he wanted to do. Obviously, that's not what Peter Jackson's about, but that's what he kind of had to deal with. So that's kind of the low end of what happened in production phase of this trilogy and why it feels so rushed. And I don't blame Peter Jackson for it. I think it was just a clusterfuck, and it happened. I think the other part of what made this so weak is they ended up going 2 movies and saying, fuck it, why not just make it 3? You have a short movie, why stretch it to 3 films? I never understood that.
Yeah, the decision to really stretch this story is something that I think you definitely feel. And we're going to talk about these movies.
You feel it in the first hour and a half of the first movie.
Yes, let's start off with An Unexpected Journey. This came out December 14th, 2012. Of course, directed by Peter Jackson, Ian McKellen, Martin Freeman, Richard Armitage. A big cast in this one. Budget of anywhere from $200 to $315 million. So a lot more money being spent than the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But this did make $1 billion because there was so much excitement and anticipation for this movie.
Everybody was expecting a Lord of the Rings level movie.
Trivia time. These movies always come out around the holidays. But there was one movie that did bigger business than The Hobbit in the Thanksgiving, Christmas, winter time of 2012. Can you name that movie?
The holiday market? Well, it wasn't Avengers.
Nope, that was a summer movie.
It was a summer movie. 2012. Les Mis.
No.
Ooh.
Some might disagree with me about this.
That would have been my guess.
this was a like November, like Thanksgiving type movie, I suppose. Not Thanksgiving type. It's not about Thanksgiving, but more than the Christmas, but just in that holiday area where people are going to the movies a lot. What outdid The Hobbit?
Trying to think, was Skyfall out at that time?
There it is. Skyfall. Yep. Skyfall made $304 million in North America. Unexpected Journey made 303, which I think a lot of people would have been stunned to hear that when The Hobbit was first announced, and Skyfall coming off of the Bond trilogy, coming off of Quantum of Solace, which no one really liked.
Wasn't
but
the
Skyfall
Bourne
was-
movies also getting like a remake? Bourne Legacy was out that year too, right?
Yeah, but that was late summer, and that didn't do.
No, I was
nearly
just
as
saying,
much.
like there was like the Bond movie doing really well makes sense, but like there's just a lot like weird movies coming out, and so like to have like a Lord of the Rings like prequel trilogy coming out, you're like, or like a prequel coming out, you're like, oh, like this should do numbers, and it did, but that's crazy that Skyfall did more than it.
Was a very hyped time for movies as well. You know, you had Django Unchained, Les Miserables, Lincoln, Silver Linings Playbook, Jack Reacher, Life of Pi, the final Twilight movie. So a lot of stuff out, but Hobbit was one a lot of people were looking forward to. And Brandon, we'll just go ahead and get right into it. When I saw this movie at home for the first time, and when I saw this movie recently, as in like, you know, a few days ago, I got about 45 minutes in and I had to go take a nap. Like I could not continue watching the movie.
Yeah, I didn't understand it.
So
I will admit,
this is the Fellowship of the
perfect.
Ring. You're watching this group get together and you care about the individual characters. And that is something that this entire trilogy botched horribly, in that none of these characters, none of these dwarves really feel distinct. And we'll talk about specific things, especially as we get into, you know, fuck it, we'll just go get into it now. There's one that the only quality they have to him is that they give him a love interest that you don't care about at all. At least I didn't personally, because it just felt
not even that
thrown in for story purposes rather than a genuine thing from a character that wasn't even in the book.
Yeah, they pulled it out of nowhere.
They pulled it out of nowhere just to make.
Is that Guillermo del Toro's dick is like making weird love interest? Is that his thing? That's his thing, right? Like,
well, he's an elf. He's not a water monster like in Shape of Water. You know.
I mean,
it's an elf and a dwarf.
So
you know?
Tommy, I'll pose this question to you because I think Mitch was on the same page with me in terms of this. Do you give a damn about any of these dwarves for pretty much that entire movie?
The only dwarf that I think had at least some sort of connection besides Richard Armitage's Thorin was Balin.
Okay,
Balin was the only one. He was kind of like the wise. He was like the wise old man that was, you know, he had like those emotional scenes, kind of like the proud father figure that was like guiding him. Aside from that,
I did like him, but I didn't remember his name. I could not remember any of these characters' names.
And again, that was
Gloin was annoying.
With the trilogy is they gave no like depth to any of the characters, even like Gandalf. Like, granted, that's because everybody
Gandalf was okay. Maybe this is a hot take.
Can we talk about
Gandalf
the beginning
was kind of bad in this trilogy?
Like
it felt like Ian McKellen didn't know how to act in this environment compared to how they had him in the previous environments, because there's even behind the scenes footage of him breaking down and crying making the first movie because he has to act against pictures of the other actors as opposed to them all being in the same room together. And unfortunately for Ian McKellen, I do feel that a little bit in this performance and throughout these movies. Maybe it's just because we're coming off watching the beautiful, lush cinematography of Lord of the Rings, but my God, did I feel the CGI in this. And I felt the majority of it was terrible.
Yeah, the CGI is bad. But, okay, so we all like the score from Lord of the Rings. The Shire music phenomenal.
Yes,
They fucking threw that in there in the first 3 scenes. Like Gandalf's ranting
I
about
love
one of
you.
his relatives, and I'm like, why is this song playing underneath this?
because
Like,
Hey,
they
we'd like to
needed
remind
the
you of good
nostalgia.
movies.
They needed the nostalgia factor to suck everybody into the film. And
They
honestly,
do
it's
that the
it's a terrible
most
decision.
in the
It's a terrible
first
decision.
movie and the third movie, because in the third movie there's scenes where it's just like, wow, this is like Madam Web levels of like, hey, we want to kind of point to something that's going to happen later, but we can't really say it, and it just like, it's so frustrating
Right.
because nothing of this ilk had
yeah,
anything in Lord of the Rings. The focus was on the story and the characters, and here it just feels almost like the property
Yeah.
yeah.
is the focus, the IP.
It
We
kind of
made
is.
this for money.
And I I'm torn on the first movie. I enjoy the beginning of the first movie because it's set in
What
the
part?
No. Do you like the
just
part where the
it's
doors
the
come
setup.
in and like the
It's so
setup?
faithful to the book.
Okay, yeah.
Because the book, The Hobbit was meant to be a children's book. It wasn't meant to be Lord of the Rings level of intensity. It was supposed to be meant to
Correct.
for kids. And the first movie was probably the most faithful to the book in terms of the beginning of the movie of just Gandalf meeting Bilbo, the dwarves coming to the house, them singing.
Which is a funny scene. It's a
There's
funny
a
scene.
million songs in The Hobbit.
Yeah.
And that's the thing most people don't realize. Like, there's a lot of different songs that go on throughout. Like, Tolkien was big into poetry, and he had a lot of it in
Right.
The Hobbit. So the beginning where they're all singing, having fun, and then they had like 2 or 3 songs just within the first like 40 minutes in the movie.
Yeah.
And
But
that I
lean
enjoy.
into that. Lean into that. Like, do that. Make original music underneath. Like, why do
But
we need to like
had they
use
condensed
the
it into
Shire?
2 movies and just kept it faithful to the book without expanding and dragging things out,
Yes.
it would have been much better.
Yes.
It
100%.
feels like Peter Jackson's only direction was stretch,
Yeah,
because
that's exactly what it
everything
was.
in the first, you know what, I'm even gonna say first movie. Everything in this first movie feels like it is 4 times longer than it needs to be, and
Yeah.
this is a 2 hour 49-minute movie. The entire the trilogy that we just saw 10 years ago before this was movies that were longer than that, that had a better pace. They felt like
Move
more
better.
was going on, and
Yep.
even once these guys get out of the Shire, and you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and just say this to start with, because I do feel like this is a praise that needs to be needs to be said. I really like Martin Freeman as Bilbo
Yeah.
Baggins. Any of
Yes,
the
yes, he's good.
trilogy's
He's good.
any of the trilogy's problems that I have don't have to do with him. How they utilize him or lack thereof in other movies, I would have liked to seen more of him. But Martin Freeman as Bilbo Baggins, I absolutely loved and thought that he was great. And all of the best scenes in this movie were the scenes with, or at least primarily focusing on, Bilbo Baggins. For example, and I think that you guys will agree, I'll take my shot in the dark.
Okay.
The best scene in this movie was the scene with Bilbo and Gollum. The Riddles in the Dark sequence
Yes.
was by far, and the Gollum CGI looked really good. Had no issues there.
They must have
sequence-
reused it,
have to
right?
change anything.
They must have reused it.
They
Yeah.
had it there because Weta Workshops was the one doing all the animation again, so they already had everything in place. So it was just kind of,
It was
put it
rinse
back
and
in.
repeat. Yeah, put it in. Yeah. So, look, like, okay, so there's one shot where they get outside of the Shire and they're like running, and it's like a 5 second like clip or something, and it's like, why is this in it? Like, it's just like some of the shots too, some of the cinematography. It's just like, why are we doing this? Like,
The sunlight
Because
looks really
they
bad
had
all
to
throughout
drag
this
it.
trilogy.
yeah,
And that was another thing with the trilogy as a whole. Azog and all the orcs, they're not that big in the book.
okay, that's. I
They
mean, I
have a
figured
very
they weren't.
they have a very minor scene. Azog is dead by the end of the film anyway, or end of the book. He was not part of the end battle, and his only role was simply he shows up once or twice to be a slight inconvenience. That was it. all these scenes of them being hunted around by them the entire movie was just added fluff to make it look like there was more shit going on.
Yeah, I mean but that's an insane decision. I
Yeah.
What did you guys
because
think about?
if you make Mitchell, just real quick, if you make this an
Yeah.
hour and 40-minute movie,
I don't think that's in Peter Jackson's DNA. I don't think he could do that if he wanted
I think
to.
it still makes $1 billion. People are like, yeah, give me more.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, you might be right. That might not be in his DNA, but it's just at that point, then just make it 2 movies. Like, why make it like? We'll get into it because by far the worst movie in terms of lengthening and just dragging stuff out is the first one, but the decisions throughout the trilogy are absurd. Some of the decisions are absurd, in my opinion. But we can get into
Let's
that
talk about the double Jar Jar Binks in this, because I think this movie and this
Is
series
that what you're
is
calling
plagued
it? Yeah.
with Jar Jar Binks. Let's talk about the damn sequence with the trolls, which I just thought was awful.
So you thought the parasites scene was the worst scene in the entire
the scene with the
trilogy.
trolls and they're gonna eat the dwarves. I thought that was really bad. I don't know about worst scene of the trilogy. We'll get there later.
Okay.
But it was very bad. And I'm like, is this? I know that, like Tommy said, this is a children's book, but you have set a tone of we're gonna go on this epic quest, and also when you put from the director of the Lord of the Rings trilogy on the poster, and you use, I don't know if any of you guys have watched the trailer for The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey. They use the song that I think was it Merry or Pippin was singing in Return of the King. It was Merry, right?
Yep.
They used that song to sell and hype up the trailer. You've sold us that that's going to be the tone of this movie. And then you have these trolls coming and like playing with their boogers and shit. And it's like, I'm sorry, is this movie made for 3-year-olds? Like, what's the tone here? And so it feels, and then you have the second Jar Jar Binks, Radagast the Brown, walk around with bird shit on his head half the movie. And it's just like,
yeah,
the tone for this is just so off. Everyone telling Bilbo Baggins about, hey, there's this journey that you're going to go on, and you might not make it back, man, but we really need you because we're about to face some shit. You have this stuff with Gollum, and it's extremely tense, and Gollum is Gollum, and you fear Gollum, and he's fucking crazy. But then you have this other stuff where it's just like the tones don't match at all. And I think that that's a problem in this movie that I don't have as much in the others. It's more unique to this, but it's a big problem with this.
My biggest gripe is in the first movie is just how they have everything set up. You have the trolls, which are childish and animated and can talk really goofy. And you have the goblins in Moria, which are just like the same kind of concept, just goofy. They all talk. They're all just kind of childish animated. But you have the same characters show up in Lord of the Rings that are the complete opposite. They're scary. They don't talk. And it's serious. So it's like that took me out of the movie right off the bat when I first saw it.
And it's fine if you want to make this a children's like angle, like then lean into that.
But that's the thing. It's like you already have these characters made from Lord of the Rings, and now it's all of a sudden you're in the same location. They're the same creatures, and they look 100% different.
They look different.
And that took me out of the movie right off the bat when I saw it the first time, and it still annoys me to this day. It's just I don't like it.
Yeah,
the
no,
orcs
that's
look
fair.
so much worse in these movies. It's not.
I don't know
close.
how it even happens. Like I don't know the orcs in really any of the Lord of the Rings movies. Like that's like top notch level of like this looks sickening. Like this looks disgusting. Like I don't want to see.
They feel like a threat,
right? Yeah. I don't want to see that creature at any point in my entire existence.
That's also because they went with realistic designs, whereas this was just all CGI and it just looked bad. I hated it.
Yeah.
It just looked like, you know how I defeat you? I go and I click on you and I drag you over to the garbage can.
Yep.
That's how I defeat you because you don't look anything remotely resembling real.
Could have scratched it. Just could have fucking scrap the whole thing. I just don't. So you're gonna call it an unexpected journey? Great, whatever, cool title. Then why are we like Bilbo? You're gonna go on this journey. It's gonna be tough, and then we just don't use Bilbo. Like we just like there's just scenes where we don't use Bilbo, and I'm like what is going on? I'm just like I just can't I can't get behind like Mitchell. You're correct. Every scene with Bilbo in it, solid. Every scene without Bilbo, bad. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And
I
Bilbo
think
is in the
I
movie.
think that's
Bilbo is in the
also
movie, but it's
because
just crazy to
Bilbo is
me.
the only character that they build up emotionally for
Yeah.
the audience. Like he's the only character we really connect with.
The,
And when he's not there, we have all these characters like we know their names, we know
right.
who they are, but we don't have any connection to them or really care about them.
I just triggered this thought, Tommy. Like you were saying, like you liked the beginning of the movie, like the first 30, 40 minutes, like the first 30 minutes. Like when they're leaving the Shire and Bilbo's like, oh, I forgot my handkerchief. And he's like, use this. And then he's like, oh, they all took bets on like if you were going to show up or not. Like that's a good scene. Like that's character development. That's
Yeah.
telling a story and being like, oh, okay, so these people like these dwarves like really doubt Bilbo. Like they don't think he's going to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But they just like don't expand on that at all. They just have like little pieces here and there where it's like scorns Bilbo for like you don't know what the real world is like, and then it's like, all right, cut to like another scene that like doesn't matter at all. It's just it's just be tighter and tell like the story within the parameters of the characters. Like
Yeah.
I don't get it at all.
I'd like to let's give our grades on the first movie, and then I have a couple of overarching things that go into 2 and 3 that really I think sync those as well that start here. I gave this one a C, 66.65.
Yeah.
It's just extremely mid because I do think that there are like Bilbo Baggins. I think that everything with him is fantastic, and I think it ends on a solid point.
Yeah,
I
the end's
just
fine. The end's good.
yeah, it's just very poorly paced and the tones are all over the place. But I did not hate this movie.
Yeah, so I think when I first saw it in theaters and I fell asleep, I like kind of hated it, and then when I saw it later, I kind of also hated it. Like probably give it like a D minus. Um, I told you guys like I'd watch these movies. I'm like I can't be this down on these movies. Like I'm like I felt like I was like half paying attention. I was like disengaged. I haven't felt that about movies in a long time. Like just not even caring that the movie's on, just like wanting to do something else.
Same.
Yeah,
That's the
that's how I
biggest
felt.
feeling that this trilogy evokes.
But
That's how I
honestly, I'm
felt.
like, well, like you know how I mentioned like Lord of the Rings are like perfect movies to like have on like when you're sick and you just want something to put on.
Right, yeah.
The Hobbit is the perfect background need to fall asleep movie.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean it seriously is. Like and maybe that sounds disrespectful. At the end of the day, I'm giving this a C minus 30.2. I think I gave it a C minus 30.2. I just looked it up. Yeah, I don't like it's fine. It's mid. It's a little bit below mid. It's not bad. It's just everything with Bilbo is great. Everything that doesn't have Bilbo in it sucks. And the CGI is terrible. And the pacing, like Mitchell said, is awful. Like I wanted to be doing something else other than watching this movie, and that's an indictment. Like that's an indictment on the trilogy as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, you guys pretty much hit the nail in the coffin on this one. I think, in terms of the pros, I think the cast is really what saves this movie. If we didn't have the cast we had, you know, between Martin Freeman, all the returning cast like Ian McKellen, Kate Blanchett, Hugo Weaving, like all
Elijah
those.
Wood for 3 seconds.
I mean, Christopher Lee, the legend, you know, for Tolkien. If
Mm-hmm.
they weren't in this film, this movie would have done much worse. But with that, I gave it a C plus 10, even 10. I mean,
So
it's just
it's all around the C range. Like
yeah.
Yeah.
I
You're the
can't give it
highest,
worse than
but
that
like
because we still have the returning Howard Shore who did a great score, not as epic as Lord of the Rings, but it was still good. The cast was great. The scenery was great. I think the one thing they did great with the CGI was like the Elven realms. Those were really cool to watch, but everything else was just it was okay. It wasn't anything to rave about.
By the way, this was nominated for Best Production Design, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, and for some fucking reason, Best Visual Effects. It won none of those
That's
awards.
political. The best
Yeah.
visual effects is political.
Yeah. So let's go to the Desolation of Smaug, but before that, two things that I think go into the second movie and the third movie. I don't give a fuck about Thorin Oakenshield. I don't. I don't care. I
had a
this
feeling
guy.
you were going to have that opinion.
They try so hard to make this guy just like, let's make him Aragorn, but just a little bit different. And it's like, no, I don't care about this dude. When he's having his issues with what dragon fever or whatever, Bieber fever, whatever the hell he has in the third movie, I don't care. I don't care. I don't feel it. It just feels like a stupid thing to drive a wedge into people, even though I know that there's a plot-based reason for it. And every single damn one of these movies, in the first one, in the second one, and even in the damn third one, every single time, Thorin's like, oh, Bilbo, I don't like you. I don't think you're shit. Why don't you go back and like rub your mom's ball sack or something?
Right, but
and
it's
then,
like expand
at the
on
end
that.
of the movie, yeah. But then he always comes back and it's like, oh, but Bilbo, you're actually the finest man I've ever met in my life, and I love you. You can marry my sister. And then, like in the second movie, he comes back. Oh, Bilbo, I fucking hate you, and you don't like. Do you have short-term memory loss, bud?
He must. Look,
that hurt my throat to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you good? Take a little.
I don't know how he talked like that for the whole movie.
So, do you think it's an Armitage thing? Like, do you not like Richard Armitage? Like,
I don't think that he is doing a particularly good job. It feels like he is forcing what came to Viggo Mortensen naturally. Yes, I know that Aragorn and Thorin are two very different characters. It just, to me, felt
like a copy.
Viggo Mortensen was also put in a much better situation to succeed, but I don't like what Richard Armitage does throughout these movies. I don't.
So my whole thing with Thorin, Tommy, is just like, if you're going to say, I hate you, Bilbo, and then one of the dwarfs is like, well, he's had like, if anyone's going to hate the world, it's him. It's like, expand on that. Like dive into his character. Dive into like what makes him mad. And they don't.
I mean, they do that a little bit with Bowen kind of giving the background.
I mean, at the very beginning of the trilogy, but it's like...
Well, no, there's a couple scenes...
It's fine to do that once, but they do it over and over and over and over.
Well, but I don't care about someone else giving the backstory. I want you to show it on screen, stuff that's happening to him that's making him feel this way. And I just don't think they do. And it makes me annoyed.
Once it's in the extended edition, I never watched them, so I don't know. But still, I get what you're saying.
I did watch the third one for the extended edition. No idea why I did that.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did. I think I accidentally did. If I'm being honest,
wasn't one of them only like 3 minutes longer?
Yeah, it was like one of them.
I think they're all collectively like 20 minutes longer.
Oh, okay. Well, they also don't have one for the first one, right? Like the first one doesn't have an extended edition. Yeah. So
no.
Why are we making? We're stretching out this trilogy, and then we're gonna make an extended stretched out of this trilogy. No. Like extend Lord of the Rings as much as you want. Like I will go to my grave with the same opinion that Tommy has. That's the way to watch those movies.
I wanted to tag on to what Mitchell said though about Thorin's.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The one thing that also bothered me with his character was the fact that they did try to make him look very Aragornish. Yes. And the fact that if you have all the dwarves in a lineup, he is the tallest one. He's the only one without a beard. He's just got like he has basically what I have, which is not a dwarven beard, which is your long, bushy, gruffy beard. He just has a just regular tamed beard, which is kind of what Aragorn had. He had like the long, like 5 o'clock shadow the entire trilogy. He doesn't look like a dwarf. He looks like a short man.
Yeah.
And you have a whole trilogy based on this supposedly king of all the dwarves who looks nothing like a dwarf.
Well,
Because
remember,
he's the one that's supposed to stand out.
yeah, I
I get it,
guess.
but
I
still.
mean, sure. Well, but okay, but remember, Bilbo's relative, could ride a horse. They're so big. They're so. I was just like, I just can't do this. I'm like, why are we throwing in these like random character facts that like at the end of the day don't really move the story along?
That
It's
was
just
more. That was another change from the book, just for Peter Jackson's sake to make Bilbo more important.
yeah.
Because in the book, the reason Gandalf recruited Bilbo himself was because his ancestors were more tough, adventurous hobbits. So he was more naturally drawn to that
Which
family.
totally makes sense to the relative like storyline that
Whereas
we've
in
done.
the movie, Gandalf basically says, "Hey, I knew you as a kid, and you were just kind of a rebel, riot kid." But didn't mention anything about his family, and basically saying, "Hey,
Right.
you come from a long line of crazy
So
motherfuckers. We want you."
I could be wrong. I think in the extended edition, I think he goes like, "I'm a Baggins of Bag End," and he's like, "But you're also a two. Like,
It was in the regular
yeah,
edition.
okay,
Yeah,
that's in the regular edition. Okay, I'm just like,
Mhm.
I'm like, expand on that. Like talk about Bilbo more. Like, just get away from the dwarves. The dwarves don't fucking matter. Like they matter, but they don't. Like I yeah, Thorin was the worst, but I didn't care about any of them. Gloin was the most annoying out of all of them. Like I can't.
I couldn't tell you who that is if you gave me 12 tries.
Glowing was the really, really fat one with the orangest beard. He was Gimli's
Yeah,
father.
yeah, Gimli's father.
Yeah, couldn't have told you.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember they
Well,
were
there
like,
you
"Oh, I've
go.
got a son at home." It's like,
Yeah.
Oh,
oh
there you go.
Jesus,
Well,
man.
there you go. I mean, but it's just like I didn't care about any of them, and it's like if you're gonna make the entire trilogy about like Bilbo goes on this journey with Gandalf and these dwarves, and I don't care about any of the dwarves, that's a problem. Like,
Yeah.
and
Let's go ahead and
that's
get
what
into the
happened.
second one now. The
I
Hobbit:
was,
The
Yeah,
I was
Desolation of
about to
Smaug
say.
yeah. Go ahead. Go
was
ahead.
released December 13th, 2013. A budget of 217 to 250 million dollars, and it made 959 million. So a little less, but still very, very
Still made
profitable.
$950 million. That's,
Now this one had two movies in the November and December area that outgrossed it. Can you name those two?
ooh, this would be
So this was
2014,
2013.
2013. I just said
2013.
With that,
Sorry,
2013,
sorry,
Brandon.
my fault, my fault, my fault.
my brain is. I want to say Iron Man 3.
Nope, that was a summer
Yeah.
movie.
Damn. That's all I got for 2013.
Really, 2013. Only thing I can think of is Lone Survivor, but that's just not it.
That made nowhere near as much.
Yep. And 12 Years a Slave did not make any money.
That did not even. You're going lower.
Yeah, even lower.
Great
Yeah.
movie, but
I mean,
that won at
yeah,
the Oscars.
yeah. 2013 escapes me, so you can
Now
go
you
ahead.
see me.
No, no,
Oz, The
no,
Great
no,
Gatsby, Man of Steel.
Rush,
no, no, no. You
also
guys
a
aren't
good
even
movie.
close. All right, I'm gonna put you out of your misery. All right, so the
Go
number
ahead, go
one
ahead.
was The Hunger Games: Catching Fire,
Makes
Ah,
sense.
which was the best Hunger Games movie for my money, and
I would
also
agree.
Frozen.
Yeah. Okay. See,
Frozen was the winter of 2013. Did better than The Desolation of Smaug. This one was nominated for sound editing, sound mixing, visual effects. Won none of those Oscars. As you guys remember, Lord of the Rings took home plenty of Oscars. The Hobbit
Mhm.
Trilogy stuck at
Nothing.
0 at the moment. We add Benedict Cumberbatch, Evangeline Lilly, Luke Evans, and let's just go ahead and get into this argument, this conversation right now. Orlando Bloom, who Brandon said in our group chat that Legolas was by far the best part of the second movie. Brandon, state your case, and I will refute it.
so So after watching it a second time, because I watched it like half,
You
watched it the
watched
first
this
time.
twice?
I know I watched it. Well, I told you guys I like half watched the first two, and then I was like, all right, I need to like give these a real shot. So then like earlier today, I watched both the first and the second full through, and then I finished the third one where I left
Props
off.
to you, man.
So
You are a
like
trooper, sir.
7 hours of work today, or whatever that
See,
was.
myself, I
That's
was
work.
watching Daredevil.
Like, yeah, I should have watched Daredevil instead. But after the second time watching it, I think my half-assed opinion was Legolas was the best because he was doing shit. He was shooting arrows, killing some people. He was just at least doing something. So I was like, oh, Legolas is on screen doing stuff. But I think my opinion has now changed where like he's not bad, he's just there. And I think that's an indictment on Orlando Bloom and Legolas.
No,
Is that he's just there.
So as I mentioned last episode, Legolas in the book is simply mentioned as an elvish prince.
Right.
He's there for just a quick scene, doesn't even have a name, just mentioned as a prince when the dwarves are taken captive. Orlando Bloom approached Peter Jackson when they were making these films, jokingly saying, hey, can I be in for a cameo for this role since I'm technically in the book? Peter Jackson said, fuck that, you're going to be in the movie and we're going to give you a much bigger role. And that's what came to be the Orlando Bloom Legolas comeback to save the Hobbit trilogy and provide some action scenes.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. It felt like
And
he was there to
the
do some
awkward
action.
third wheel to a love triangle that nobody asked for in this trilogy.
Well, that's just yeah. I mean, that's just a tough add-on. I really hope that's not a Guillermo del Toro decision, and it sounds like it was. So
I did not know Orlando Bloom approached him at first. That is because I think Orlando Bloom is really bad in these two movies. Yeah. I think he's awful. I think not only does it just look weird because they try to make him look younger, but they fail. But it's not quite Uncanny Valley, but it's approaching that. He has no damn purpose in the movie. Neither does Evangeline Lilly, if we're being completely honest.
But it makes complete sense.
Evangeline Lilly, she was a created character for the sake of just putting.
So they're both created characters. So this is an exact like. This is what can go wrong when you create characters. The Walking Dead creates Daryl Dixon, throws Daryl Dixon on screen. Daryl Dixon becomes the best character of the Walking Dead franchise. He then gets his own like spin-off series and like just is in a bunch of the Walking Dead stuff. This is what happens when you create characters and properties and you just throw them in and you hope it works and it sticks. This is the downside of that. This is what
happens when you do it for A, nostalgia, or B, I don't know. We just need some shit to fill some time.
We just need some arrows flying. Let's do it.
We need, you know what? Lord of the Rings had a very substantial female fan base. And there's no real women in The Hobbit. So we just need to add someone in there so that we can say, hey, women, hey, she has no fucking purpose in the movie, but hey, she's here.
But again, we have Cate Blanchett. Cate Blanchett is insanely awesome.
She has no purpose in this damn trilogy either.
Well, technically she doesn't because she's not in the books either. It was another just add-in.
They just make a character.
I didn't know that, and yet I could tell.
Well, so again, in the nerdy side note here,
go ahead.
The White Council that we see at multiple scenes throughout the trilogy, they're only referenced in the book because Gandalf basically just disappears saying, I had to go to council meetings, disappears for a couple chapters, then magically just returns and helps out, and then disappears again to go talk. They were never, like Saruman, Galadriel, none of them are in the book. But Peter Jackson, of course, wanted to bring the cast back and have them more involved to show, hey, let's have some more scenes with Gandalf. That way we can fill in some more scenes. And that's why they're all there. That's my nerdy side note.
Yeah, I definitely did not like the first few action sequences. The one with the spider I thought was just kind of too long and drawn out, but
the spider had too many lines.
That was a Guillermo del Toro decision because they,
of course, it was.
what I read is he wanted the monsters to be different from Lord of the Rings, and he wanted them all to be able to talk.
Oh
That is the
my
most
gosh.
Guillermo del Toro thing I've ever heard in my
Yes.
life.
What an
More
awful
monsters,
decision.
and I want them to speak. Yes,
Yep.
that is Guillermo del Toro.
He makes some good movies, but my God, that is a terrible decision.
And
If
they
Guillermo
would,
del Toro adapted the story of my life, he would pull a better man and make me a monster. He would make me like an iguana or something like that. I don't know why, but it would just be what would happen.
You get around
the
to Better
scene-
Man? You get around to it? No, I'm just kidding. It was a joke.
Oh yeah. The barrel sequence. I think that it started out decent,
but again, it was dragged out
but
too long.
it was dragged out too long. There was too much going on in it because then the orcs show up, and it just also it looked really bad. Like that's just a problem that I have with most of the trilogy. I'm sorry,
And
it looked so fake.
and you want to hear another reference to the books? In the books, they were enclosed barrels, and they just float down the river, and nothing happens.
But we need an action sequence to draw things out.
Yes.
Man,
Because
we
this
needed to
movie
see our
has to be
characters, so we
2
had to
hours
have
and
them-
41 minutes long.
in 2013, just tell your past self to go watch Night Moves, Iron Man 3, Olympus Has
Night
Fallen.
Moves. What the hell is Night Moves?
Is it? I think it's a Jesse Eisenberg movie. I'm actually scrolling on Google right now. 2013 movies about terrorism. So
About terrorism. What
It's
does
like-
that
it's
do
like-
with the fucking Hobbit?
nothing. Let's move on. Is my whole
This
point.
is just how much we don't want to talk about this trilogy.
Okay, but Brandon, to Brandon's point, if you look at the 2013 box office list and you watch Catching Fire, Iron Man 3, Man of
Right.
Steel, Gravity, Fast and Furious 6,
Good movies.
Star Trek in the Darkness, even if you don't like those movies, and like I do not like Iron Man 3, it looks a lot, all those movies look better. So if you
Yeah.
look at the movies at the time, if you look at the movies at the time with the Lord of the Rings was top tier stuff. This is bad for the time being.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing going against it is it looks bad. Like you named all those movies significantly look better than
Also,
this
to
movie.
mention, they filmed these with the hopes of making it a 3D movie.
God bless. Imagine.
I thought it was
imagine-
released in 3D
Oh,
because
it
they
was?
released these in
Oh my
they released
God.
these in the high frame rate too,
Imagine,
which a lot of people said that it hurt their eyes.
Well, yeah. Imagine Smog just flying over your head, yeah. Let's just get to the grades.
Okay,
I just
I
can't.
know because I've got to
Go
give
ahead,
some.
go ahead, go
I've
ahead.
got some praise to give because I think this is by far the best one.
Yes.
Now I remember watching it and loving it.
The best.
I did
one?
not. I did not love it, and yes, this is the best of the three. I think it's not even close. I like the character of Bard quite a bit. Luke Evans as
was
Bard.
a great addition.
I
Okay,
think that
I will agree with that. I will agree.
I liked the addition of his character, and I liked the whole Lake Town dynamic.
Mhm.
I didn't like something else that I will get to more prominently in the third movie. I have one more doofus to talk about. But I thought that Luke Evans did a great job, and then Smaug the Dragon. Again, the best scene of the movie is Martin Freeman as Bilbo Baggins talking to CGI.
Yep.
Best scene of the movie. And I thought that whole dynamic in them talking, you feel the presence of Smaug, and this dude is just
And
not to
that's-
be trifled with, to quote
But again,
Michael
this
Caine
is-
from The Dark Knight Rises.
This is where Peter Jackson made these movies at least watchable, because when he actually connected with the source material and had those scenes, like that was a scene straight from the book. It was perfect. Those are the scenes that made the movies good and watchable. Had he not done that, and had we not had those scenes, it would have been terrible. Because
The one thing I remembered most from this movie was I love the way that they leave this. I
Yes.
think the ending of this movie is fantastic.
I
And
will. Yeah.
I think that they leave it off.
It's a good ending.
Smaug is like, fuck all of you. I smell Lake
I'm
Town
out.
on you. I'm going to burn Lake Town to the ground.
Yeah.
And so Smaug is just like, again, you feel fear for the people of Lake Town, and just Smaug, like he's coming. And then it cuts to Martin Freeman, kind of the shot of him. What have we done? Cuts to black, and then I do remember my fiance hates Ed Sheeran, so
I forgot.
Ed
Sheeran
Sheeran sings the credit song, and as soon as
it's bumping,
he starts,
dude.
as soon as
It's a
he
good
starts
song.
singing,
That's what I'm
no,
saying.
I agree, I like it, but as soon as he starts singing, she just goes, oh, "Fuck this guy."
Same with the first movie. The credit song kind of bumping. For being honest.
No, I think this one, because you just kind of leave going like, ugh, like the end of that movie was kind of depressing and
went
dark,
dark.
and
Yeah. And then we just cut to Ed Sheeran.
That was the closest we got to Lord of the Rings level cinema.
yes,
Was the ending to Desolation of Smaug.
Okay, no.
and that is why I give it a B 11.07.
Okay.
It can still only get up so high.
I gave it a B 40.
Okay, I hate to be the bad guy.
Bingo.
You're allowed to be. It's okay.
I'm giving it a B minus 1.3.
Okay, but that means
It was
that
still a B.
we're all giving it. If this was Rotten Tomatoes, we all would have been rotten on the first one. We're all fresh on the second one.
Yeah. So yeah, I like hate to like dismiss it as like, oh, I just want to move on from this movie but like the idea is like the second one is fresh. Let's get to the third one, because the third one is what actually.
Because the third one stinks.
Yeah.
This is the worst one as far as I'm concerned.
So,
yeah.
Quick note on that. The third movie was made mostly of extra scenes left over from movies 1 and 2.
There's no fucking way.
With extra.
There's no way.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah, I couldn't tell at all.
This seemed like a labor of love to me.
How do you make an extended edition?
You make it extended. Hey, I got you more trash.
But you gotta remember, they filmed these movies all together, and Peter Jackson decided to make a third film out of all this in July of 2012, 6 months before they released the first movie.
What an asinine thing to do! Oh my god! But I will say, while we're on the discussion of extended editions, I do think it's like hilarious that like Nosferatu is like 4 minutes long. That is like an
that's
incredible.
What it was.
It's an incredible extended edition. But what is that? What they like? How do you add 20 more minutes? Like what did like? So this is all just leftover scenes. Leftover scene.
Well, they did do more filming, obviously, for the battle and stuff like that.
Yeah, because you have to do that.
But I think all the battle and stuff was.
Are there 5 armies in the books? Did they make that up too? Is there 5 armies in the book?
Smaller scale battle.
Okay, well, feels like they made up everything else.
Really, they made that up too.
they made up everything else. So
is anything in this real? But to get the this was the following year, 2014. They made these 3 straight years, just like the other ones.
Should have done 2012, 2014, 2016. That's just.
You wanted this to be dragged out any more than it already was?
That's a great point.
Really? 2 movies again. Name them that outperformed it in that winter.
2014, was that Guardians of the Galaxy?
No, that was a summer movie. You do this with every Marvel movie.
The movie I want is one of the greatest films of all time. Whiplash. I want it to be
Whiplash made like $5. So
I know Whiplash made $5, but in my head I want it to be American Sniper, right? American Sniper did.
That's one. That's
money.
One.
Yeah.
And the other one is from a movie series we've already talked about.
Interstellar.
Interstellar.
No. In this Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1.
Oh, okay.
Well,
what did Interstellar do?
The 2014 movies.
What did Interstellar do, by the way?
Interstellar. So Battle of the Five Armies made 255. Interstellar made 188. So more
Give
people
me
were
Interstellar every single time.
every single time. That is correct. But so this movie came out, and each of these made less than the one that did before. This made $962 million. Actually, internationally, it made a touch more than
How
two.
did they keep
But
making money? Who was like, yes,
because,
I want a third one. I want to see these dwarves.
well, I also think that when you end on a cliffhanger, like the second one did, people are a little bit more drawn to be like,
Oh,
"Oh,
yeah,
I need
that's
to
a good
see,
point.
I
I need to
think
see
That's
how
a good
that
job by Peter
concludes."
Jackson. That is a good job by Peter
but here's the
Jackson.
thing
Get
for
him in
me.
the
I
movie
think
theater.
I remember when I first watched these movies. I wasn't in love with them, but I enjoyed them just for what they were.
Mm-hmm.
And with the way Desolation of Smog ended, obviously you're like, oh shit, like stuff's about to go down. It got
You're
really
like, now
dark.
I gotta watch the next one.
Like, okay, maybe this was like Harry Potter, where we start off really light and childish, and then we kind of shift to the dark stuff, and then we go really dark. I was expecting that. And then you have a third movie called Battle of the Five Armies. You're expecting a big fucking battle. And I was expecting Return of the King level action, because obviously that's what Peter Jackson
Ha!
delivered. And we did not get that, and it just became a huge flop.
We got a kid setting up his fucking like playset and being like, all right, these guys are gonna fight each other now. Like, oh,
Well, and that's where
what are we doing?
another change from the source material that pissed a lot of people off is the way they killed off the dwarves. You have Thorin, Fili, and Killy, who all get basically assassinated, just slaughtered in front of Bilbo. They don't die like that in the books. They basically do a big heroic charge knowing that they're going to lose and die.
Wait, what? They changed it to make it worse?
Yes.
Yeah, because they just kill like 2 or 3 of these, and they die in the most like, all right,
Yeah.
like,
No, because
Yeah.
in the book, they basically die the hero's death saying, like, hey, we know we're going to lose this, but we need to go out fighting. And they die in battle, charging in to protect
see,
the
they
others.
have that. They have that scene and they have that
They
shot in
have
the
that.
movie,
And
and it
that's where
looks
they should. That's where
awful.
they should have died in that battle, not off on a little side quest where no one can actually see them die.
But
And that
proving
pissed a
once
lot of people
again that maybe you ended off the second movie in a good spot, but then you kill Smaug in the first 15 minutes of this movie, and yeah, he burns a lot of Lake Town down. That's a problem. He wrecks some shop, but you kill him that early. He's not even a threat. Like if you're going to this movie like, oh, I want to see what happens with Smaug. Can you negotiate to pay a ticket for the first 10-15 minutes? Like, hey, it's a 144-minute movie. I'll give you 10% of the money that the ticket price costs to see 14 minutes of the movie. Smaug dies, I'm out, and I'll be on my way.
I hope people did that. I hope people asked for refunds 20 minutes in.
But if
Like,
you did that,
really?
you wouldn't have got to see Legolas run through the air up.
I mean, yeah.
Worst,
That's a great
yes.
point.
That is the worst scene because it is so stupid. It looks so unbelievably fake.
Right.
It has a character that I don't care about fighting someone I don't care about, and
They turn Legolas into the Fast and Furious franchise, where every stunt move he does has to one up the last one he's done.
but at least
Because
with
the
Fast and
last big fight
Furious,
he took down a whole elephant by himself. Now he has to become Jesus and run through air.
but Fast and Furious at the very least, it knows what it is. The Hobbit thinks that this is like some epic stuff when you look like this goofy cartoon. And speaking of goofy cartoons, I'd like to present the LVP award, the least valuable player for the entire trilogy.
We love
And
it.
let me make sure. Alfred Lickspittle. Ryan Gage played Alfred Lickspittle. This dude, and I'm not even gonna try to hate on the actor too much because he hasn't really been in a whole lot since. Um, this this character fucking sucks. This is the Jar Jar Binks of the series, and
Yeah.
somehow I think he might be more annoying than Jar Jar Binks. It's
agree.
close. It's close. This dude just completely comes in and it's like again, second movie, I liked Luke Evans. Third movie, Luke Evans starts out strong, and then he starts delineating responsibilities to this guy, and I'm like, why?
It's like
And he
Luke
keeps
Evans. Stop.
he keeps betraying him, and he's like, oh, but it's okay, I'll keep giving him more to do. It's like, get the women and children to safety, and like, he's not gonna do it.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you keep like it's so frustrating, because it's like, okay, there's a character I like, you're making him worse by being stupid. You've got Thorin, who I've never liked, at his worst in this movie. I never gave a damn about the whole like dragon fever, hunt for the Arkenstone thing, because it just seemed like a watered down version of what happened with Gollum. And I just never really bought it, whether it's from the writing, the editing, or his performance. I never bought it. It feels like this movie has less of Bilbo Baggins than any other movie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think a lot of people think that 2 has the least of Bilbo Baggins, but I think that this cuts
What a
back
decision,
and forth.
though.
What do you mean?
Just to not have Bilbo Baggins in the third movie. What a decision.
Well, he's
He
in
plays
the movie.
I mean, he's in the movie. It's just we
He
cut
plays a
back
key
and
role
forth
in like
like
the
you
first
said.
20 minutes of the movie
Yeah.
when they're coming, out of Erebor. And then he gets fucking knocked out in the battle, and we don't see him again until everybody's dead, and he wakes back up.
And he's like, "No,
what
my
happened,
friends,
guys? Like,
my
yeah.
friends, yeah."
Yeah, and that's another big problem with this trilogy. Oh, my friends! At the end of the third movie in The Lord of the Rings, you feel like everyone's
like,
beat down.
You're like Gilmy likes Legolas, like Aragorn is friends with everyone else, like Merry
Sean
and Pippin.
Astin and Sean Astin and Elijah Wood are dead. Like they just look like they are like actively falling apart. No one in this movie looks like they've been through anything. They all look exactly the same as they did in the first movie.
Down the street.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're like, oh, well, there's a shower in here. Like everyone you felt like the victory was so earned, and everything that led them to every step of the way. And now it's come down to this.
Man.
And in this movie, you just feel like, and here's the next one. And there's battle sequences in this, and I somehow am more bored than I were when they were all farting and eating cheese and singing songs in Bilbo's living room in the first movie. I don't know how you made battles this disinteresting, but you have found a way. I don't know how you did it. This feels like it was made by a complete and total hack trying to replicate the magic of Return of the King. Oh, wait, it's the same fucking guy. I don't know how this trilogy has managed to pull this off, because this movie should feel the way Return of the King does, where it's like, all right, well, hey, and so much of this at the very end of Return of the King, the whole complaint of like how this movie has like 17 endings. Peter Jackson goes, all right, well, hey, you think that movie had 17 endings? I'm gonna give you one with no fucking endings. This movie's just gonna stop.
The movie's just gonna stop.
There's gonna be no emotional.
I think that's where the
extended.
I think that's where the extended edition goes into, because then it's like
extend these nuts.
Well, I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. At the very end, it's like, Legolas, you're gonna meet this young ranger. I need you to fucking do. And I'm like, stop. I'm like,
what is this, a Marvel end credit scene?
Well, and that's they pulled
that was
from
my whole
the
point. That was my
appendices.
whole
So
point.
in the books, Tolkien has like all these appendices at the end of the book that go into all like the side lore and all the side stories that he couldn't include. That was one of them. So it was a clue to that, but still,
they literally just threw shit in. There's like,
they were just trying to connect
there's
the
that
dots.
scene
at the very end. It's like Bilbo then turns to old Bilbo, and it's like Gandalf shows up. Is that extended, or is that the regular edition?
No, that's the regular cut.
What is the extended edition? I have no idea what they're adding. Like,
The extended edition was all battle scenes.
oh, it's all battle scenes. Okay, well that makes me hate it even more. I can't believe I watched the extended edition of this
Actually, no,
because
there
I didn't
was
like
one
any
scene.
of
Why
the
did
battle
you?
scenes.
No,
I didn't like
no one
any of
asked
the
you to
battle
do that.
scenes in this. No battle
The
scenes.
third movie extended was all battle scenes, and it also had a scene where they had the funeral for Thorin, but still,
Yep, I knew that one. Yeah, that one.
nothing critical.
Okay.
There's
Well,
also
that's
that
good to
scene
know.
with Galadriel and
So-
Elrond that looks awful and
Mhm.
has no purpose in this movie. And I can tell Tommy wasn't in the book. I can already tell that it wasn't in the book because it felt like one of those where it's
you're a
like,
genius.
wouldn't it be really funny if we had some of the characters that people liked in the movies that people actually liked doing something that looks like shit? No?
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not
so-
gonna. I'm just not even gonna bother talking about that one. It's just
yeah. Let's just move on. So my whole thing with this is you can tell there's little kernels. You can tell that Peter
Little kernels of
Jackson
shit.
wanted to make this before Lord of the Rings because if you end off like let's say we make this 2-3 hour movie. Let's say we make it 2 movies, an hour and a half each. If we end off with Bilbo running to the door to let Gandalf in, and then we go straight to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and we have that exact same like scene where it just like Gandalf is coming to visit him or whatever. If we do the exact same thing, I guarantee you this trilogy or this like Hobbit hits completely different. But we just fucking extended it and threw shit in and made stuff up and it actively annoys me. I can't believe I spent 15 hours of my life watching these two movies.
No one asked you to do that.
Well, it's because I was half paying attention the first time because I was so bored. Let's just
grade this.
Let's just grade it. Like
grade it and put a nice little bow
you're
on it. And put it in the
you're
past.
getting bored talking about it, which is really funny. Yeah, this is the worst one as far as I'm concerned. It's not even close. I gave this a D plus 81.97%. And
Yeah.
I'll be honest, that kind of feels generous.
yeah.
So I was not that low. Mine was a C minus 20%.
Yeah, but come on.
You were close.
Yeah, that's close enough.
I still kept it in a C range. I didn't want to throw it down the hill.
You're gonna love this, Tommy.
F.
D.
Yes.
Oof,
It's a D.
my heart.
44.2. I typed it out. I'm about to put all these in Letterboxd. I typed it out and I was like, this movie pisses me off. But like the thing is,
I will accept these very poor grades out of the knowledge that these movies are just garbage. But my love for Lord of the Rings, that's
what I'm saying.
them.
I love Lord of the Rings. I love Lord of the Rings properties. We saw the movie last year, Mitchell.
The War of the Rohirrim.
What are they doing with Lord of the Rings properties?
I didn't like War of the Rohirrim, but I'll tell you this: I liked it more than Battle of the Five Armies.
Oh, 100%.
What
I did,
but still mid.
I am looking forward to The Hunt for Gollum because Andy Serkis is directing it. Viggo Mortensen, Ian McKellen, Andy
Is he
Serkis
gonna be Gollum too? Okay, good for him.
That I'm looking forward to, and I hope that can get the Lord of the Rings franchise back.
They can do whatever they want because, like you said, Tolkien has material. That,
material.
Well,
the problem is getting the rights to that material. That the Tolkien estate is very stingy with what they do with it, and that's been a big problem for a lot of the films. But still,
this is what I want them to do with Harry Potter. You know what I mean? Like I want them to do like a Marauders thing. I want them to go deeper into stuff that like.
That's the thing. They could do that. I mean, J.K. Rowling has no problem taking money. Like, she will take any dollar she can get. Whereas the Tolkien estate's
she can't write though.
The Tolkien estate's very like. They want to. It literally is like a cult. Like if you deviate from the source material, it's like, blasphemy.
Oh,
Tommy, have you seen Venom? Let There Be Carnage?
Yes, and I hated it.
Well, guess who directed Venom Let There Be Carnage? Andy Serkis.
Oh.
No,
So,
no, 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 no,
I
no,
am
no,
not
no, 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 no. Andy Serkis had some good moments as a director in that movie. I'm not defending the movie. I think the direction was
I
okay.
didn't hate it, but I had
You
some
know what?
fun with Venom too.
I
It's not
will allow.
good,
Look,
but
he needs to have
Woody
mistakes now.
Harrelson's
That way, he's
character
learned
is
from his mistakes, and he can make a perfect movie with The Hunt for Gollum.
I need
also
it. I need
I know
it.
there's the Rings of Power on Amazon. I've heard no good things about
So-
Rings of Power. Now, some of those have been like just flat out people being racist, which
Yeah,
that doesn't qualify as
A lot of
criticism.
the-
I think Rings
but
of
for
Power
people
is
that
fine. I think it's fine.
but-
I think Rings of Power.
but
is fine.
for other people that weren't just gonna levy that at it, I have not heard good things.
And isn't that like a prequel like series type thing?
for the to save you the hour-long nerd speech of what it actually entails.
Okay.
A prequel going back like thousands of years before
Yep.
Lord of the Rings. It's like the deep lore of Tolkien's world. But a couple of problems they have with that is they have very limited access to source material. Like they're not allowed to use like 80% of what's written for that time period. And then you have all the woke bullshit that everybody's being racist and hates just to hate it. So like female
Yep.
characters, color characters, like anything of that, people are just trashing on.
That's
which
crazy.
I don't think is needed. It's not necessary. It doesn't hurt the
I
story.
saw the first half of the first season. Looks phenomenal.
And that was
Looks
another
good.
thing.
At least
It
it
was
looks
very
good.
heavy CGI, but it was good looking CGI,
Right.
whereas everything else was lacking.
I mean, it's Amazon's like thing. Like it's their, yeah. Like they needed it to like make some money. So
But that's a whole nother thing for a whole nother time.
Yeah. Well, we have done it. Our time in Middle Earth. No, we are not going to review War of the Rohirrim. Also, just because I don't like to review movies on this podcast that are less than a year old. I like to give
That's
it a little
fine.
bit of time to breathe before we talk about this stuff. But Brandon and I both, I think, need a little bit more time with the 2010 movies before the 2010
yeah, I'm gonna need
podcast.
some time. I'm gonna need some time.
I've got 5 more movies to rewatch and 7 more movies to watch for the first time before I'm ready to do that. So I say that's probably going to happen next month. But
I don't know how
I've
much
got
time you guys need. I mean, you guys have had 15 years.
No, well, Mitchell gave me remember Mitchell gave me these movies like last time we talked, so 2 weeks, and he's like watch 40 movies.
No, I just said watch what you can. That's all. Watch what you can.
I'm gonna get to 2025. I'm gonna really try. I'm gonna really try. But what I have seen of 2010 so far,
you've been a big fan of. So focus on the good
cool
stuff.
Some cool shit.
Yeah, but that podcast is going to be legit in April because
Let's go.
our next series, folks, it's time. We did Lord of the Rings, and now we get to go to Hogwarts. It's Harry Potter time. So next podcast,
extended editions only.
Oh, on Peacock,
what?
yes.
I'm kidding.
Are there extended editions?
I think there are. Yeah.
They're already
man.
long as hell. No, the next podcast is going to be Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. So
Let's do it.
That series begins next week. Folks, thank you for listening to our takes on the Hobbit trilogy. Form your own opinion. If you watch these movies and you really liked them, don't change your opinion to match ours. Enjoy the movies.
I'm proud of you.
If you hated the Hobbit movies before I did, congrats on getting there before me. I don't really care, but do you? But next week, Harry Potter. Join us then. Goodbye.